What is going on, everybody? It is week 10 of fantasy hockey. And what we're going to do today is talk about the teams with the best and worst schedules, the streamers to maximize your games, and some new must-add players. Starting off with the most off nights for this week, just a quick look at the schedule. Pretty normal, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday being those nights that are off nights, and then Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday being those heavy nights. Now, the teams that have the most off nights are the Rangers and the Sabres, and the reason for this is because they both have 4 games and 3 off nights. They don't have the best opponent goals against average, but still, having players from these teams is going to help you maximize your games. You also have 2 teams with 4 games and 2 off nights, those teams being the Anaheim Ducks and the Chicago Blackhawks. That's solid for maximizing your games as well. And then finally, we have 2 teams that have 3 games and 2 off nights, and those teams are the Carolina Hurricanes and the Ottawa Senators. I also wanted to mention that 4 teams have 4 games and 1 off night. Not the best for picking up to maximize your games, but still. These teams are the Blue Jackets, the Minnesota Wild, the St. Louis Blues, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Moving on, let's talk about the teams with the least amount of games this week. And unfortunately, we have 2 teams that only play twice this week with 0 off nights. Those teams are the Dallas Stars and the Washington Capitals. Moving on, let's talk about the teams of the easiest opponents versus the hardest opponents. Starting off with easiest, we have teams that have an above 3.00 opponent goals against average. These teams being the Washington Capitals, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Ottawa Senators, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Anaheim Ducks. There's a good chance that the players on these teams perform better than they usually do. On the flip side, we have the teams with the hardest opponent schedule. These teams having a below 2.70 opponent goals against average. And these teams are the Vegas Golden Knights, the Devils, the Oilers, the Sabres, the Islanders, the Los Angeles Kings, the Blackhawks, and the Boston Bruins. Moving on, let's talk about some streamers. Like I said, the teams with the best schedule are the Rangers and the Sabres because of those 3 off nights. So you're going to want to pick up players from these teams. With the Rangers, there could be some good options. Trocheck, Zibanejad, Kreider, all guys that are on Powerplay 1, all guys that could easily have monster weeks for you. And then with some deeper league options, Alexis Lafreniere, non-Powerplay 1, but still on that top line with Panarin. And then Will Coulee, who puts up really good peripherals. With the Sabres, there's some great options as well. Alex Tuch has been promoted to Powerplay 1. He may be available in a shallow league. Dylan Cousins is line 2, Powerplay 1, solid peripherals. Owen Power is Powerplay 1 with Rasmus Dahlin out with back spasms. He's only day-to-day, but still, Power could be Powerplay 1 for the entire week. And then you also have Jason Zucker, who's still Powerplay 1. JJ Peterka, who is not Powerplay 1 anymore. Not the best. And then Bowen Byram. If you're watching this on Sunday, there's a chance that you're winning your matchup, and you can make an ad for next week already, right? Maybe you have an extra ad that you want to use. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they may have no ads left, or they want to use their last ad today to potentially win their matchup. With that being said, some of you are going to have to pick up one of these players on Monday if you want to stream them. And unfortunately, you are competing with your league mates for these players. This can lead to some of you having to set an alarm at 3 a.m. so you have a chance to get that player. I know I used to do this at times, and it was annoying that I had to wake up super early to guarantee I get that player. Well, with GiddyUpSports.com, you no longer have to set an alarm. That's right, guys. GiddyUpSports.com allows you to schedule ads at any time in the future. For example, Buffalo has 4 games and 3 off nights this week, and I think Jason Zucker is a solid ad in my league. He puts up solid hits. He's on Powerplay 1. I'm in a deeper league, so he is a viable option for this week. So what I'm going to do is head over to GiddyUpSports.com, sync my league. Only works on Yahoo right now. Head over to free agents. Go under Jason Zucker. Add him, swap him for a player on my team, schedule it for 3 a.m., and now I guarantee that I can have Zucker for the entire week. This is an absolute cheat code in fantasy. There's more info in the comments below, and make sure you head over to GiddyUpSports.com to gain a massive edge against your competition. Next up, we have 4 games and 2 off-night streamers, those players being on the Ducks or the Chicago Blackhawks. With the Ducks, there's always a lot of streaming options. I would say Frank Vetrano is probably my favorite. Depends on your league settings, of course, but he puts up great peripherals, great ice time. And then you have the other usual suspects, Troy Terry, Mason McTavish, Ryan Strome, Cutter Gauthier, Alex Killorn. Leo Carlson is still injured. And then in terms of the Blackhawks, there's always options on the Blackhawks as well. Bedard could be available in a more shallow league. Then you have the guys on Powerplay 1. Ryan Donato puts up good peripherals on Powerplay 1. Teravainen, Bertuzzi, Vlasic, the defenseman. And then some other players like Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, Philip Kurashev, etc. Now I want to talk about some streaming strategies that you can utilize throughout the week. if you don't want to pick up a player for the entire week and hold on to them, you could do this. Starting off is picking up players on Monday and dropping Thursday. These are going to be players on the Anaheim Ducks. Thursday and Saturday are heavy nights, so you're likely sitting the player that you're picking up here. But I just talked about the streamers just a little bit ago. So yeah, as you can see on the screen, Vetrano, Terry, Zellweger, Strome, etc. You can also pick up players on Wednesday and drop them Saturday. These players being from the Ottawa Senators. The reason for this is because they play on Wednesday and Friday, which are both off nights. In terms of streamers, always good options on the Senators. Drake Batherson playing amazing this year. Josh Norris, very low roster percentage. He's usually available because he's only a pure C. And then other players like Claude Giroux, Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot, etc. The last streaming strategy is picking up players on Friday and dropping them Monday. These players are going to be on the Carolina Hurricanes because they play on those 2 off nights, those off nights being Friday and Sunday. And in terms of the streamers, not the best options on the Hurricanes. They're pretty top heavy these days, but Svechnikov could be available in a more shallow league that doesn't value peripherals. Seth Jarvis, his roster percentage isn't too high, could be available. Gostisbehere potentially. And then you have the deeper league options like Jack Roslovich. Okay, moving on, let's talk about some power play updates, starting with the Buffalo Sabres. Alex Tuch has been promoted to power play 1, but unfortunately, JJ Peterka has been demoted to power play 2. I don't expect this to last the entire season, but this is obviously not very good news for JJ Peterka. Very good news for Alex Tuch owners. I do expect Peterka to get back on this top unit in favor of Jason Zucker at some point, but Zucker has been very good on the power play, so it's hard to predict the future on that front. I would consider dropping JJ Peterka at this point, but the Sabres have a good schedule for maximizing their games this week, so would hold off on doing that for now, but yeah, not the best for JJ Peterka. Another update with the Sabres is that Owen Power is currently power play 1 with Rasmus Dahlin out day-to-day. Dahlin has back spasms. It's only day-to-day, but we don't know the extent of this injury and how long it is going to last. So for now, Owen Power is a solid add short-term. Then with the Colorado Avalanche, Nichushkin and Lehkonen are still power play 1. Solid news for both of those players. With the Red Wings, we have Michael Rasmussen as the net front player on the top unit. This was the case because Patrick Kane was out. Now that Kane is back, Rasmussen is still on these top units, so something to watch out for. We will see how that develops. We also have the Florida Panthers. Carter Verhaeghe is back on power play 1. He has been on absolute fire. Very good news for Verhaeghe owners. Samoskevich has been sent down to the AHL, I believe. So yeah, good news for Verhaeghe. And Ekblad is still power play 1 as well. So good news for him as well. Still a must-add defenseman. Moving down, we have the Los Angeles Kings. Brandt Clark and Quinton Byfield are still power play 1. I know some people might be concerned because last game Clark had very limited ice time. He wasn't on the power play, but this was explained because Clark was injured in that game. So that's why he wasn't out there. So wouldn't worry too much. I still like Brandt Clark, but the ice time has been concerning. He's been shuffled around from the power play 1 to the power play 2 on some nights. So yeah, I mean, his stock has gone down, but I still think he has potential long-term. We will see what happens when Drew Doughty returns. What I will say, though, is there is that risk with Doughty coming back. That is going to reduce his even strength ice time, and he could take over that top unit. So I wouldn't be opposed to dropping Brandt Clark if there is another viable option on the market. A player like Jared Spurgeon or Lane Hudson comes to mind. Moving down, we have Minnesota Wild. Jared Spurgeon is still power play 1. Good news for him. Marco Rossi is power play 1 with Zuccarello out. And Marcus Foligno is power play 1 with Joel Eriksson out. With the Montreal Canadiens, Lane Hudson is power play 1. He is playing good on there. The only problem with Hudson is that his peripherals are garbage, but still, this certainly bumps his value up in fantasy. We also have Laine back and healthy, and he is power play 1. I think he scored 2 goals in 3 games. Very good stuff from Laine. He just needs to stay healthy, and if he's healthy, he's going to be a viable fantasy option in a lot of leagues. Then with the Nashville Predators, very tough season for the Predators, and it got even worse because Ryan O'Reilly is out week to week with an injury. With this Ryan O'Reilly injury, Gustav Nyquist has been promoted to power play 1, so he's going to see a bump in his fantasy value. Next, with the Islanders, it looks like they may be going back to a regular power play 1 because their power play 1 is looking like Bo Horvat, Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, Kyle Palmieri, and Noah Dobson. Very good news for those top players, specifically Horvat, Nelson, and Noah Dobson. Next with the Flyers, it looks like they're still distributing the power play time evenly among the first and the second units. But it looks like defenseman Emil Andre is power play 1 for now, so that is something to consider. But unfortunately for him, Drysdale is back today. He was removed from the IR, so we will see how that shakes out. With the Penguins, it looks like they split the units last game, which isn't good for anyone involved. Maybe some of the lower tier players, but not the best for the top tier players. So in terms of the units, they had Letang, Grzelcyk, Hayes, Crosby, and Raquel on the first unit. Then they had Bunting, Glass, Rust, Carlson, and Malkin on the second unit. The power play did do well in this game, so maybe they're going to give this a run for a bit. And yeah, it's just not ideal for those top players. With the San Jose Sharks, they like to mix it up. Sometimes they go with 5 forwards, sometimes they go with Jake Wallman, and sometimes they go with Timothy Liljegren on that top unit. So in the last game, we saw 5 forwards, and that's what it is at the moment. With the final page of power play updates, starting with the Kraken, we have Vince Dunn, who has been on the power play 1. They are running more heavy usage with this power play 1 lately, so that is good for some of those top players like Jared McCann, and not so good for players like Brandon Montour. I will say I do think that they distributed the power play time evenly last game, so I'm assuming that's probably what's going to end up happening. The Kraken love to run a 1A, 1B power play, and I doubt that changes. We will see what happens moving forward. With the Blues, they're running the regular power play 1, Jake Neighbors, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, and Pavel Buchnevich, but they seem to be mixing up the defensemen. Falk was on there, but then he was injured, and then it was Parayko. I think Peronovich got some time. So, yeah, I don't think Broberg got any power play time in the last game. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I will keep you guys updated on who ends up being the power play quarterback for this first unit. With the Leafs, they are running 5 forwards still. The power play is doing well, so I expect them to keep this together. And with this power play, they have Matthew Nyes on it over Morgan Riley and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So, good for Nyes, not good for those defensemen. We also have with the Canucks, Jake DeBrusk and Garland still power play 1, but it seems like JT Miller is returning soon, so that is going to hurt one of these players. I believe when everyone was healthy, Garland was on this top unit, so there's a chance when Miller returns, he is taking DeBrusk off that top unit and back to power play 2. We will see what happens. Finally, last 2 teams, we have the Vegas Golden Knights. Pavel Dorofeyev has been moved down to power play 2. Very disappointing news if you owned him. And it looks like Victor Olofsson is back on that top unit. We also have Mark Stone healthy, and he is back on the top unit as well. Then we have the Winnipeg Jets. Ehlers is still out. Not sure how long he is going to be out for. Maybe a couple of weeks, maybe like 1 or 2 weeks. But with Ehlers being out, they have Cole Perfetti on that top unit. Moving on to talk about some new must-add players. I understand a lot of these players right here on this first page are shallow league ads, but some of you guys are in 6-team leagues or 8-team leagues, so we need to talk about some of these players. The first player we have is Zach Hyman. The reason I'm putting him on here is because he was definitely dropped in some leagues, and I had somebody tweet at me asking if they should pick him up. And on his team, he had Gabriel Vilardi on his team. And listen, I like Vilardi, but there is no reason why Hyman should be on the wire and you should have Vilardi on your team, guys. You guys need to understand Zach Hyman is power play 1 and line 1 with McDavid. He is bouncing back. We've already seen it happen. And I do think he should be rostered in pretty much any league size. Next, we have Carter Verhaeghe. He's back on power play 1, which is very good news for his value. And like I said in my buy low video, all the metrics suggested that he was going to bounce back. And that's what we're seeing happening. I suggest you pick him up if he is available. Next, we have Valeri Nichushkin of the Avalanche. His roster percentage on Yahoo is something like 58%, and that is so disrespectful, guys. If he is available on your wire, you need to pick him up. I think in like a 6-team league, he should be rostered, so there's no way his roster percentage should be this low. Next, we have Vincent Trocheck. I'm expecting him to bounce back. We already saw him have a good game in his last game. He is a player that is still on that line with Panarin and Lafreniere. He's still power play 1. I'm expecting the power play points to start coming very soon. So, yeah, definitely a bounce back buy low player, especially if your league values peripherals. Then we have Robert Thomas, who is back and healthy. He was dropped in a lot of leagues, it looks like, because his roster percentage on Yahoo is only like 75%. So I would suggest picking him up depending on your league settings. Then we have Alex Tuck, who is on the power play 1 now. He's pretty much been power play 2 the entire season, and he has still played really good. So I think he's going to be very good moving forward if he stays on this top unit. Next, we have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who I think is a bounce back buy low player. I understand the peripherals are not the greatest, but he's still line 1 with McDavid in power play 1, and I'm expecting more power play points very soon. Then we have Wyatt Johnston, who is bouncing back. He is playing better. I love his ice time. I love the metrics. The only issue that I have is sometimes they move him down to line 3, but sometimes he's on line 1, so Yeah, that's what it's looking like, even strength, but he is still power play 1, and I do expect him to play better as he has moving forward. Next, we have Arturi Lehkonen, who is line 1, power play 1 right now. When Drouin comes back, there's a chance Lehkonen's not on the first unit, but Lehkonen's ice time is like 22 minutes a game in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, this guy is going to produce with those minutes and with his line mates. Next, we have Mark Stone, who's back, line 1, power play 1. Pavel Buchnevich, line 1, power play 1, and maybe seeing a new head coach bump. I'm expecting him to produce more because historically on the Blues, he's been almost a point per game player. Bo Horvat's a player I'm expecting to bounce back. Solid peripherals. He's a solid add if he's been dropped in your league. I know he's only a pure C, but still. Then we have Brian Rust, and I just think his roster percentage is way too low for what he brings to the table. Solid peripherals, great ice time, playing with Crosby, decent power play time. I know they're splitting the units now, but still. Nazem Kadri, playing better, solid peripherals, great ice time. Frank Petrano, elite peripherals, very good ice time. The ice time was a concern at the start of the year, but it's back to the levels where it was last year. So I think Petrano is going to be good for the entire season. Moving on to the next page, we have players that don't have that high of a roster percentage compared to the players that I just talked about. And these players include Patrick Laine, who's back on the top unit in his office on the left side. They've moved Caulfield to the bumper. Very good news for Laine in fantasy. We also have Kirill Marchenko, who's line 1, power play 1. Stefan Nason, line 2, power play 1. Elite peripherals, great on the power play. Connor Garland in the top 6 on the power play 1, getting elite ice time, way more ice time than he's ever seen in his entire career. Then we have Jake DeBrusk, who is line 1, power play 1, playing amazing. Very good peripherals too, but I do have concerns when JT Miller returns that it is going to hurt Jake DeBrusk in fantasy. So in my opinion, I might want Garland over DeBrusk long term because when everyone was healthy, Garland was on that top unit still. So something to consider, but still, DeBrusk is a solid add. Then we have Fabian Zetterlund, who puts up elite peripherals. Jake Neighbors, who is line 1, power play 1, puts up solid hits if your league counts those. Rickard Rakell, who is bouncing back, good peripherals, great ice time. Dylan Cousins, who's still power play 1, solid peripherals. Josh Norris, who's similar to Dylan Cousins as a pure C in the top 6, power play 1. Matthew Nyes in the top 6, still power play 1, running that 5-forward power play 1. We have Anders Lee, who's putting up solid peripherals and protection in the top 6, power play 1, solid ice time. Nick Schmaltz, line 1, power play 1, bouncing back, had a very low shooting percentage, and he's finally starting to score some goals. We also have Logan Cooley, who is still on that top unit and in the top 6, so he's a solid option in a deeper league. And then Kent Johnson as well, who is line 1, power play 1. With the last batch of forward adds, we have Marco Rossi, who is line 1, power play 1, with Zuccarello out and Joel Eriksson Ek out. We have William Eklund, who is now on the power play 1 because they're running 5 forwards. Could very likely change, but if he's on power play 1, he's line 1, power play 1. He's a young player who is producing solidly. We also have Ryan Donato, who is still power play 1, has a triple eligibility on Yahoo, has those peripherals in the top 6. Then we have Victor Olofsson. If your league heavily values peripherals, he is at a massive disadvantage, but he is on that power play 1. So that is solid. Could be a good option in a deeper league. We also have Quinton Byfield, another player that doesn't put up the best peripherals, but he's in the top 6 and he's on the power play 1, and we could see him bounce back. We also have Jason Zucker, who's line 3 now, but he is still power play 1. He's putting up solid hits too if your league counts those. We have Gustav Nyquist, who has been promoted to power play 1 with Ryan O'Reilly out. We have Michael Rasmussen, who is currently line 1, power play 1, and puts up solid peripherals. Could very well see Kane back on that top unit, but still could be a very sneaky option in a deeper league. Then we have Marcus Foligno, who's been promoted to the top unit with Joel Eriksson out with an injury. I could see them mixing up this power play. They could put Marcus Johansson on the top unit over him, but we did see Foligno on that power play 1 last game, so could be a good option in a deeper league. Moving on to defenseman adds. A lot of these guys were in last week's video, but I have to include them because a player like Aaron Ekblad, for example, has still a low roster percentage compared to the value that he is bringing to the table currently. So yeah, first player, Aaron Ekblad, moved up to power play 1. We have Vince Dunn, who is healthy, power play 1, getting significant power play time in the last week or so, playing very well, putting up good production. We have Jacob Chychrun, who's power play 1 with Ovechkin out. We have Jake Wallman, who gets great ice time, good peripherals, solid production, not power play 1 at the very moment, but sometimes he is. We have Travis Sanheim, who is not currently power play 1, but his ice time is elite. He puts up good peripherals, very streaky player. We have Jared Spurgeon, who who is power play 1 on the Minnesota Wild over Brock Faber. We will see how long that lasts. I do think they're going to give him a run here. We also have Lane Hudson, who is power play 1 over Mike Matheson. His peripherals are terrible, but I expect him to put up a good amount of points with the ice time that he's getting and getting this power play deployment. We also have Alex Vlasic, who is power play 1 with Seth Jones still out. When Seth Jones comes back, I do expect Jones to get back on this top unit, but for now, Vlasic is going to be very solid. We also have Owen Power, who is power play 1 with Rasmus Dahlin out. Dahlin could be back potentially next game or in a couple of games, but in the short term, Power sees a fantasy bump. We also have Damon Severson, who has really good ice time and puts up good peripherals. And lastly, we have Braden Schneider, who is seeing an ice time bump with Jacob Trouba gone and now on the Ducks. So Schneider could be a player that could fill your categories, those categories being shots, hits, and blocks. Finally, let's talk about some goalie ads. Philip Gustafsson, there's no way that his roster percentage should be something like 90%. Maybe this is dead leagues, but if you're in a very shallow league, he needs to be rostered. Then we have Stuart Skinner. This is why you hold on to Stuart Skinner, guys. He's playing very well lately. We need to remember that he is on a playoff team that made it to the Cup Finals last year. So yes, if Stuart Skinner is available and you need a goalie, he is a solid option. Then we have Aiden Hill, who's playing fantastic lately, getting better volume. We have Kochetkov, who didn't have the best game last game, but he's healthy, and he's still the #1 guy. There's no way Spencer Martin is taking over that net, so yeah, he's still solid. We have Thatcher Demko, who may be returning today, potentially. I'm recording this Sunday morning. We will see what happens. He backed up in the last game, but if Demko is good and he's healthy, he's obviously a fantastic option. Then we have Darcy Kemper, who is back from injury, could have been dropped. Maybe he's available. We have Karel Vemelko, who's playing great. Connor Ingram is still not close to returning, so he's the #1 guy. We have Tristan Jarry, who is surprisingly playing better. He's a guy that is streaky, though, so be wary of this. We have Samuel Ersson, who just got taken off IR. Before he was injured, he was playing very well and getting a lot of volume, so he's certainly a good option. Then we have Arvid Soderblom of the Chicago Blackhawks. Could be butchering that pronunciation, but Mrazek is out with a groin injury, an injury that he's dealt with over the years. So Mrazek is on the IR, and Soderblom is the #1 goalie on the Blackhawks. Then we have Scott Wedgwood. Not expecting him to become the #1 starter, but he will get some starts here or there, and in a deeper league, he could be viable. We also have John Gibson, who is healthy. Sometimes he's getting 2 games in a row, and then Dolstol's getting 1, so he's getting that volume that you might want. And then finally, we have Mackenzie Blackwood. Obviously not the best in the category league, but if you need a goalie with volume, he could be a good option. All right, the last thing I want to tell you guys is the buy low, sell high video is coming out Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. A lot of players to talk about. And that's pretty much it, guys. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.